Hello, everybody. Welcome to Hanging with Howie. And tonight's topic is going to be how we do our contracts. And we are not lawyers. We're not going to give any legal advice at all. Just how we do it, because everything changes from state to state. And we would encourage you, if you're new and you're going to be working with contracts, which you should be, consult a local attorney in your state. And so what is a contract? Well, in my state, I looked this up on the interwebs, and it's only 5 things. A contract must include an agreement. The involved parties must be competent to agree and agree freely, being like, I guess that means you can't be crazy. It includes consideration, which I'm interpreting to mean like we're going to get paid for doing this gig. Have a lawful purpose. I would imagine playing music for a party or a wedding would be a lawful purpose, and be in a legal form required for that specific type of contract. So here we are. So guys, that is, first I'm going to let me introduce my panel tonight. We have Buddy with us. Buddy, you're from Chicago area, are you not?
Yes, sir, I am. For the great
Chicago,
state of Chicago.
Chicago, as Brian likes to say. And as always, one of my very good friends, Brian, is with us. And we have Jay, we have John, we have Bill is here.
Hey ho.
All right. So
Mikey looks like he's in the prison uniform tonight.
Mikey, are you here? Oh, okay, great. Mikey's here.
Joining us from the penitentiary is on work release.
Mikey, yeah, Mikey's on work release right now.
It's so Mike from Breaking Bad.
Representing Cell Block C.
Cell Block C. Mikey's the one that brought up this topic. As always, we at the end of the show, we say, if you have any topics you'd like us to cover, and this was something worthwhile. So there are many kinds of contracts, like a written one. Do you guys send out a paper one, get a paper signature, digital signature, or verbal? There also is a verbal one that you can do as well.
I think without a real signature on a piece of paper or a digitally recognized signature, your contract pretty much is not a contract. It's one side saying something to somebody, but until they sign it, again, this is a difficult topic because each state is a little bit different.
Every state will be different. Yeah.
And there are precedents usually set, state by state as well as federally when it comes to agreements. We saw that during COVID. A lot of people for the first time learned a term called force majeure,
right?
Which is a contractual term for act of God. I had an event a couple weeks ago that got canceled by the coordinator on Friday at 1:00 and moved from Saturday to Sunday. And then at 6:00, it got put back to Saturday. And in those 4 hours, I'd been offered another event. And the problem is that the company that hired me, their contract states, blah, 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 canceled by client. They didn't have the verbiage or representative of client, which meant if they had had the verbiage or representative, meaning the coordinator spoke on the client's behalf, he could have collected the contract and I didn't have to show up. So whenever people ask me about contracts, I'm always like, start with your state. And I'm very honest. When I started my company, I went around on different websites and I asked very politely, could I see your contract? And probably 50% of the DJs were like, no, I can't show it to you. And then a good friend of mine, Jane Doe, with a Jane Doe email address, started asking the same DJs, and they were happy to give it to her. So then she gave them to me, and I got to look at all the different contracts, and I kind of went through them, and I picked and chose what I liked, and I created my contract. And then I did have a lawyer look at it, and he's like, yeah, you're fine. Like, I only have 7 clauses in my contract. Pulse and I'll say this on TV here, Pulse and I have talked, and I've seen his contract. He has 26.
Wow.
He has clauses that I would never think to use. Mm-hmm. But in 25 years, have any of those other 20 clauses come up at an event I did? No. And I think there's also the kindness of strangers concept, whereby if you treat a couple with respect or a client with respect and they're respectful back, contracts are just a legal handshake. Like, hey, I'm going to show up and do my best to help you. Remember about 10 years ago, the famous, whether it was true or not, bride suited DJ because no one danced at her wedding? And it kind of went through Facebook and everyone got scared. And then people started adding the clause, if you sue me, you can only collect up to the amount of the contract.
Oh, I've had that in there for years.
But that's the thing. Everybody's got a different... So you're assuming in your contract that that's a possibility because you already have that in the contract.
Failure for me to complete services shall be limited to no more than the agreed price or contract amount or whatever it is, something.
Right. And it's gone to court where people have gone to court and said, my wedding was ruined because the DJ showed up drunk, showed up late, nobody danced, and I invested $100,000 in the day. And, I famously told this story 5 years ago, and I'm doing it this December. I do a party for a federal judge. And every year I ask her a legal question, and they're always softballs. But 5 years ago, I said to her, hey, Judge, real quick, if somebody falls on my dance floor and breaks their leg, can they sue me at a wedding? She's like, yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what? She goes, it won't go anywhere. That's why you have insurance. But they'll sue you, the guy that made the dance floor, the venue, the artist that had the song that was playing, the manufacturer of their shoes. You can sue everyone for everything. That's why you carry liability.
Greatest Hits, Volume 1.
But you know what?
Okay,
I'll go on.
What's your bottom line here, Jim?
Bottom line is carry good liability insurance.
Do you use a paper signature?
96% is paper. The rest is emailed and digitally signed.
Digitally?
And if it's digitally and we meet in person, I bring my copy and have them sign it, and we both have a sign. Because I just think it makes them feel better to know that we're both in agreement.
Okay, great. Who wants to go up next?
I'll go next if you let me tell a story first.
Okay, tell the story.
So I want to break it up a little bit. Huh?
This will be the 2-hour show?
No, I swear this won't take long. I just want to break it up a little bit because I heard something on the radio today that was incorrect, and I got all excited about it, but it was incorrect by a couple days. But I wanted to throw it out there just to see if you guys knew about this. Some of you may know about this. October 1st, which was Saturday, right? 40 years ago, the first commercially released compact disc hit the shelves.
Yes, I did see that.
In Japan.
Yep. In Japan. Yep.
Howie knows the answer to this, but I was wondering if any of you knew what the title was. I'll give you a hint. The album was almost 4 years old, like 10 days shy of its 4th birthday when it was released on compact disc. Do you know who the artist is, the album is? Anybody have a guess?
The Budgies, Video Killed the Radio Star.
Buggles, no.
Buggles.
Famous album. And you got to think compact disc, okay? Rich people are buying this at the time in the 20s and 30s. What would like people with money in their 20s and 30s around 1982 be listening to?
Dire Straits.
No.
But it's a good guess.
Howie, you want to let them know what it was?
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Bill. If you know it, go for it.
No, I'm just guessing.
No, it's fun.
Michael Jackson, Off the Wall?
No.
Tease him a little bit. Give him a few hints.
Okay. Well, those are pretty good hints. It's a 4-year-old album. Not this artist's most recent album in 1982.
Is it a band or an artist?
It's an artist. Who has a band?
4 years old.
Lionel Richie.
No. But you're in the right ballpark. I don't want to take over Howie's show with this, so I'll just tell you the answer.
No, just go ahead.
It was Billy Joel 52nd Street.
Bailey hates that answer.
Bailey does not like that answer, but
Bailey
it's
does
true.
not like
That's not a
that.
Billy Joel fan. No,
Bailey doesn't like Billy Joel.
Bailey should be.
too much harmonica in the piano man.
Billy Joel 52nd Street was the first commercially released CD in Japan, October 1st, 1982, 40 years ago.
Well, it's a great album, so I could see that.
So anyway, I'll briefly tell you about my contract stuff. The first thing I'll tell you is that I've changed it many, many times. I'm finally settled on something that I'm real happy with. And actually, I got it from a friend of mine who is a professional who, and it turns out this is the exact same contract that Microsoft uses. Okay. And it's called SOW. And it's a statement of work is all it is. And I pulled it up here without doing a screen share. I'll just kind of go through some of this with you. You services provided by, me, my information, performed for the organization or the individual I'm doing the services for. There's a section here that's period of performance. Then there's a scope of work section, kind of lays everything out. And, there's things in here, things like a DJP, system and wireless microphone, for up to so many people. DJ music played from, and then setup and one teardown. Where it is, deliverables, which is the part where I say when I'm going to show up, when everything starts, and when I stop everything, and how long my teardown is going to last. There's also contractor responsibilities and client responsibilities. Things like providing shelter for outdoor events, having sufficient power there, things like that. It's all laid out. And then there's also a fee schedule where we talk about, the agreed upon price and, any, deposits that are made and things of that nature. It's pretty cool. And I do that digitally with my clients. I've been using it this year and, it works pretty well. I do have something in the contract that I did get some kickback on one time, and I stood my ground. This client wanted me to change some verbiage in the contract. I told them absolutely not. There's a clause in my contract that says that, because I break it down on the fee schedule, how much my rental is, how much the performance is. It's broke down there. So this is how much it costs to rent the gear. This is how much it costs me to deliver it, set it up, and perform. It's all there. And there's a little thing in there that says that the rental fee does not include stolen or damaged equipment, and that the purchaser is responsible. And he did not like that at all. And he threatened to not use me. And I said, okay, have a nice day. And he called back in an hour. I'm so sorry. I really don't like that, but I'm going to go ahead and go with it anyway. You come highly recommended. So why do you have that there? And I said, well, because, I things break. I said, listen to me. I said that things break. It happens. This is about someone in your audience smashing my laptop or somebody stealing one of my uplights or something like that. This is not about something that just happens because of normal wear and tear or just fails for some reason that you had nothing to do with or nobody in the audience had anything to do with. This is about neglect or abuse on your part or your audience's part. Well, that wasn't made that clear. I said, well, I'll tell you what, you would have a lot of fun taking me to court because my laptop crashed at your gate. I wouldn't worry about that too much.
Right.
But, yeah. So it's worked really well. It's pretty complete. It lays everything out. So nobody's, people are pretty good about reading contracts, especially when it's in bold and, oh, I have responsibilities. What are those? So they go over them. They at least read them. It's not like I'm going to hold their feet to the fire on every little thing, but it is stated and I'm real happy with it. So, and it's something that I can send out in the PDF. They can digitally sign it, send it back, done and done. Pretty simple. But
So
it's
you're
a
doing the
standard scope
digital
of work.
signature then?
Yeah, it's standard
That's
scope
cool.
of work contract. And I like that. And I'm not an attorney. nor do I play one on TV. I'm not a contract lawyer for my state or any other state or country or province or anything else.
It's just how you do it.
This is just how I do it. Yeah.
Have you had it looked at?
It's a Microsoft contract, dude. Microsoft, I'm sure, has had it looked at. It's the same contract Microsoft uses.
No. I know. And I'm not trying to,
Have I had an attorney look at my contract? No.
for your state.
Well, it's my friend, okay, who lives in the state. This is a contract that Microsoft uses whenever they're doing work for his company.
Right.
And he's
I totally get that. But we're not Microsoft. That's my only concern would be would there be, I'm just devil's advocating this.
Yeah, no.
Would there be something, because my only kickback on my contract, my thing that's exactly what yours is, my statement is, client is responsible for any damages to DJ and gear caused intentionally or unintentionally by client and or guest. And that's the only kickback I ever get to is, well, what does that mean? I'm like, if your drunk guest breaks my laptop, well, that's not my responsibility. I said, then I'll just stop the event and call the police.
Yeah.
Or we can make it, I said, it's a deal breaker for me though. It's like, if that's an issue, I'm the wrong DJ.
Yeah.
So
and then,
the same thing.
I've heard so many people talk about and over and over again, well, I don't want my lights stolen. Well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And I keep thinking to myself, what kind of gigs are you accepting where these kind of things are happening to you, or you have the fear of these kind of things happening to you? So that contract may weed out some knuckleheads. Oh, well, we drink a lot and like to piss in our hat. Well, then I don't want to work with you.
Yeah. Well, in all my years, I've only had one drunk dive into my DJ booth. and it went, and I quick hit the master off and everything went down. And they went over and they were like, oh my gosh, they removed the guy. And as it so happened, it was the last dance. And
I will add one quick thing before I yield my time to whoever's next.
Okay.
John Young had said that in his state, which is Minnesota, which is
they trade for fish.
It's very cold there. He said that. Ben had said that as well. But I guess a case came up about something that happened at an event, and there was a lawsuit, and Mikey has his hand up. You good? I can't hear you, Mikey. Oh, we're cool. All right. Anyway, he had said that the judge in this case said, like the entertainment contract, the only thing that was really binding the judge's interpretation was start time, end time, and how much. Everything else was just like noise.
Fluff.
That was that judge's interpretation. Every judge is going to interpret this stuff different. If you run into a situation where there's a problem, every state's going to be different. Every judge is going to be different. So we just do our best.
Guys, real quick, for 13 years, I had a federal judge sign my contract. And when I said to her one year, the legal question was, how's my contract look? She goes, I've never read it. I'm like, you've signed it? She goes, Jay, I'm a judge.
Jay, to build on that, we've had a couple lawyers that have hired us for their wedding, and we ran into the same thing. They signed our contract, and Tracy and I look at each other and go, well, we never had a lawyer look at our contract, but I'm like, we have had lawyers look at it because they read it and he signed it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, they saw something they didn't like. We all know how our lawyers are. Lawyers, if you hire them, they're to protect you, but if you don't hire them, they look out for their best interests.
If they're young, they'll go through and change. And I've had that where the young lawyers will in red go, first party of the second. I'm like, did you just graduate law school? And they're like, yeah, last year. I'm like, yeah, I can't change my contract this way. Well, legally it has to say within the first party here and once known as the claimant, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and then you get older lawyers. I had a dad and mother lawyer with daughter lawyers. I did 2 weddings. Both weddings, they were late on the check. And both times the dad said at the wedding when he paid me, he goes, I can't believe this. We breached 2 contracts with you and there's 4 lawyers in the family. I'm like, yeah, sorry. But it's funny to me. As long as you get paid, as long as you go and get out of the gig in one piece, That's really the
And
bottom line.
they were awesome to you, right, Jay?
Yeah, they were great.
Same thing with me. They're awesome people to work with, but it's just kind of funny.
Play Jackson Brown, Lawyers in Love, if you ever get two lawyers getting married. That's my contract advice.
Warren Zevon works too. Yeah.
All right. Hey,
Lawyers, guns, and money.
we're gonna let Buddy go next, but before that, Buddy, Mikey wants to know: is your mic working? Try, Mikey.
Hello. Anybody?
There you are.
Okay.
Yeah, it's working,
All right.
dude.
All right. So Buddy was up and he was talking about how do you do your contracts there?
What we do is, we have our standard contract, and a lot of the same verbiage I'm hearing from you guys, the same thing we have, if some damage our equipment and so forth. We send that to them electronically. We email the contract to them. We have them sign the contract, have them scan the contract and send it back to us. Now, we also give an option. We have a PO box in the bottom of the contract. They can snail mail the contract back to us, but we'll accept a digital. We print it off, put it in their file, and we keep that digital file. They signed it. They have a copy. We have a copy. Everyone's happy. But I feel that, I haven't done it, but some guys use the with DocuServe, where you can actually sign the digital document. I've never done that. I don't know if anyone here has done that, but I've always just sent an email and let them sign the contract and decide what way to send it back to me on. Is it, electronic, or they decide to mail it?
Alrighty.
A hard copy, but two for yourself.
Okay. Mike.
Oh, me, I email most of my contracts, and then the client has 2 weeks to get the contract back to me. They don't get it back to me, the date's back open, and basically everything is the same. Like if my equipment gets damaged by one of their guests or whatever, they are liable for it. Even if they want to push it to their guest, they can push it over to their guest to be liable for it. And it's just, I always print out a hard, even though I email it, I print out a hard copy for myself and then a hard copy for the client. So when I do meet with them, we both can sign that, and I'll keep that. I'll just take my phone and scan the copy that I email to them.
I have a question for you, Mikey.
Yes.
Did you prefer working on Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad?
Breaking Bad.
Okay. So I was just curious.
My camera is so...
I'm a big fan, by the way.
Can't have better for Mike, yeah.
Thanks, Warren.
Thanks, Vince Gilligan.
Mr. White.
All right. Who wants to go next here? We got two left.
John, you
The other lawyer guy, you can wrap it up. How's that? I'll just do a quick one.
sure.
I can relax.
Yeah, the whole idea of the contracts, when I started out, I was underage, so I did paper contracts to protect the client, to make them feel warm and fuzzy. It was more for them, like, I will show up, I will bring this. And then I had to have my parents undersign because I was 16, 17 to make it legal. But as time's gone on and the contracts have matured, a lot of the verbiage has changed to protect me as well. To, not just make them feel good, but I need access to the location X hours before time. I need electrical service. I need, and things to protect us. So it's been paper probably since 85, 86, but lately digital is fine. Usually I bring a hard copy when I collect the deposit, whether they're going to give it to me digital when I sit down and meet them. I get the signature and say, now you've got the date. But either way is fine. But the purpose of it has been more so now lately protect us. They assume we're going to show up, they're paying us. It's kind of shifted more to now we just have to make sure our things aren't going to get damaged. We're not going to be held responsible because the cake caught on fire. Well, we're suing the DJ. We're like, why? I didn't make the cake and I didn't set it on fire. But just to protect yourself for that, that's the language you need these days, is to have that on file, agreed to by both parties, so it's a binding contract, and at least you're protected.
Howie,
Right.
Can I jump in here real quick about
Sure.
something about MJ not playing vulgar music or sexually explicit music? That I also stress to the client, and I also have it in my contract.
That's in there, yeah.
But if the bride comes up to me at 20 to 10, because most of our weddings get over at 10 o'clock, and she says, I want to hear Eminem, and you didn't get your final payment yet, what do you do? So that's...
Go online and stream a clean version.
Oh, this bride did not want a clean version. She wanted the explicit version.
I've ran into that a lot this year.
Sadly, Mikey, I wouldn't have performed if they hadn't paid me the final payment.
Oh, yeah, that's that.
Yeah.
I'm not just being a jerk, but it's absolutely demand is
out. Yeah.
The final payment for me is 7, which I'm going to up to 14 for 2023. But it's like if you've got this, and it's happened. Yeah, my dad got burned by a vendor a couple years ago. My sister's DJ didn't show up. Can he pay you the day of? I said he can pay me in cash the day of.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I understand getting burned, but he needs to understand that I can't take a check and then wonder if it'll work. Now, granted, on my phone, I can deposit that check, but that doesn't mean the check won't bounce 3 days later.
Yes.
So if he wants to Venmo or PayPal me the day of, okay. And Venmo's better than PayPal because Venmo doesn't have a comeback.
Yeah.
I don't know about Zelle, but, you know.
It's tough.
I get anxious when clients start to get tricky. Like, I can't pay. I had one client that did say a couple weeks ago, yeah, there might be a chance I can't pay you till after the event. How is that going to work? I said, sadly, it's not going to work at all.
But I'm a Nigerian prince.
You know what? She had more than enough. She's spending $80,000 on the wedding. She had the money. She was just allocating for the honeymoon. And the coordinator called afterwards and said, thank you so much for standing your ground, because the florist and the photographer both backed down. And she told me that money's going towards the honeymoon. I go, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I got to feed my family. I get paid for this or it's a wash, and I'll go collect another gig somewhere else and I keep her deposit. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to tell you.
I think some of them are counting on the money that will be given to them for gifts. I've been paid like that, you know, a long time ago.
That sounds like a great tip idea, but
yeah,
I think in today's times, you know what?
Yeah.
And this is all you say to them. You know what? You have to pay me 7 days out. If you want to pay sooner, you can. And I say to them, the reason for that is you have so much to do the week of your wedding. The last thing you want to worry about is running around writing checks for me and the hall and the bartender and the florist and the photographer. Get that off your table. Get that off your plate so you can be in the moment, be present, and enjoy the wedding. And they get that that's a factual statement. I'm not protecting me. I'm actually helping them out.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Bill.
So when I put my contract together, there were a few things that I wanted to make sure of. One was that it was user friendly for both parties, but more so that it was also reader friendly. So I did mine in as much of a keep it simple, stupid, non-legal terminology as humanly possible while still remaining a legal and binding contract. At the time, I was fortunate. I had a roommate from a few years ahead before who had gone to law school. And so he, kind of guided me through some things. But rather than him checking over it, he took it to one of the professors at his law school that's not only specialized in contract law, but also service contracts, because that's a little bit different than, other types of business contracts. And the guy said, this is pretty much the simplest contract I've ever read without, giving either party too much advantage. And that was my goal. It's basically a 2-page agreement. The first page is 75% date, time, location, when, where, and of course the client's name, the contract number. I even came up with a way to keep my contract number really, really simple, so that the only time there's a duplicate number is if it's on the same, an event on the same date, and then that gets a dash with 2 letters for the first and last name of the DJ. So my contract number is the event date and the time. So for example, if it were today, the contract number would be 10/3/22. And if it were during the airtime of this show, it would be 10/11. But, like at the end, the last 2 numbers would be 10 and 11. It's that simple. So it almost never duplicates itself. My payment terms pretty simple too. 50% down, remaining balance due 30 days prior to the event date. The reason I say use the words remaining balance is that number can change. So you don't say the other 50% because you've now bound yourself to it being the other 50%. If the client decided to add things to the invoice, to what you're providing, they can then dispute that number. So that's why there. The way I'm explaining this to y'all now is how I explain it to my contractor, to my clients in a meeting or in a, before signing. The next part is about payment and reservation, but it's basically what makes it a contract between us, which is very clearly stated. And it also includes language that the invoice is an addendum to the contract, because the invoice is where I would list itemized, additional items. This has also allowed me to skirt certain other issues that I'm not really going to get into, but it would require me to put my accountant hat on. But by including those items as part of my service, they are not something that I need to consider a sale or rental. So that avoids the accounting problem. After that, it's basically when their paperwork and song lists and everything are due back to me. My requirements from, either the venue or the client as far as event needs, power, rain cover, that kind of sort of thing. The damage clause, the one thing I will say I do differently in my damage clause than everybody else has said is I state that the client is responsible for ensuring that the damages are that I am reimbursed for any damages or injury by the person who caused it. In other words, if their guest does it, all the client's responsible for is making sure that the guest reimburses me. And the reason for that is the way it's legal. If you try to hold your client responsible for their guests or even somebody else's action at the event, then they can get out of that. They can win that case in court easily. It doesn't even go to court.
I don't know that it's a matter of going to court as much as it's a matter of an intent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I just finally got my ape cans replaced from when Art took them to the school, and a kid stole one of those. Who knows what kid it was, but a kid stole one. We don't know what kid it was. So the client was just like, you know what? It's really sorry about that, and paid for it.
Yeah.
Done.
No. Yeah. And in most cases, they will. Contracts are not necessary for the people who are voluntarily living under a moral code. Clients are for the people who are going to cheat you.
Right.
Well, California, a lot of clients have that.
What's your bottom line there, Bill? Are you doing paper, electronic?
Oh, on that regard, pre-COVID, 75% of my contracts were signed in person. Post-COVID, 5% are.
I was going to say CDs.
He has that in his. I've seen his contract. If a CD gets scratched at his gig, the client's responsible.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
If it's broken, it's even bigger.
Red jewel box.
I don't know about you guys on your states, but in my state, California, most venues now require not only my liability, the photographers, the caterers, they require the clients to pick up a one-day contract. It's usually about $100. So I started telling clients ahead of time, hey, you know what? One of the things that I know has protected other clients of mine, they picked up liability insurance for their one-day wedding. Seriously, I'm like, it's maybe $100, $150, but it will cover you if let's say one of your guests gets wasted at your wedding and drives off and crashes their car. Their lawyer is going to tell them to sue you because you're responsible. Because if they weren't at your wedding drinking on your dime, they wouldn't have gotten a drunk driving into a tree. Oh my God, we never thought of that. I'm like, it's just to protect you. One of your clients breaks all my gear. I'm coming after you. If you have liability insurance, that's what I'll collect from.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like a great idea. Just what it's worth.
I have a question, Howie. If you don't mind me asking the panel. Now, I run into it. I'm sure everybody else runs into it. Client says, we go through everything, and down the road, they want to add a custom gobo, or they want to go, hey, you know what? You talked about uplighting. I want to add uplighting. We then do an addendum contract, which is a more modified individual item contract, separate from the original contract, and refer it back to the original and an addendum. Does everyone else do that, or am I the only one doing that?
No, you give them a new contract.
Yeah.
Well,
Definitely.
The new dollar amount, just like Bill said, the 50%, that amount changes.
Right.
And you credit them with a retainer that they've already paid you. And the new fees, and in parentheses, uplighting $250, gobo $250. That new $500 moves to the 50% or whatever they owe you.
Well, the other thing also, I use Square for processing credit cards, so that amount appears on their Square basically account or their balance on Square. But the first contract still is in play. The second contract refers to the first contract, and this is added on to the first contract. It's an addendum, so you're adding on to. So the contract's still the same. The balance changes, and they see that on Square, and then on the addendum as well as the main contract is always their amounts they owe. So we always try to spell that out as much as possible for the customer.
Maybe put additional fees at 0 on the first contract, and if they choose close to the wedding they want to gobo and sparklers and all that, now the additional fee line gets filled out, so you don't even have to addend the contract as much as you're just updating the fee.
I would think that using that terminology, I think where you're going is a good idea, but I think using that terminology is going to scare off the people that are worried about hidden fees. You know what I'm saying?
That could be too.
Perhaps but this is why I have, the little part of, what makes an official contract state that my invoice is an addendum to the contract. The invoice can continuously change both, by adding or subtraction. So, and that doesn't alter the original contract. It just continues to evolve the original contract. And the contract total doesn't have to match the invoice total, if that makes sense, because that's the amount we agreed to at the time of
what they owe you is what they owe you at that point.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, you can have a base contract that somebody comes across and says, all right, I just want your basic package. So that's what they're buying from you. And then you have the add-ons. You can just keep adding on to that. And that's what they owe you at the end.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I don't have packages, but yes, essentially the same concept. There is one other thing I want to throw out there that is in its language that's been in my contract since it originated, and then adjusted it about a year later. And I've talked about this before, just openly. I had a clause in there that I called my "Oh my God" clause, and it was basically there to state that if there was a cancellation due to extreme circumstances, a new date would be considered for rescheduling, at the discretion of Carlisle Entertainment, blah, blah, blah. And then there was more language beyond that. That clause saved me from COVID nightmares that everybody else seemed to be experiencing. Every one of my clients knew that they immediately had the option to postpone and reschedule, and that they would still have me as their DJ as long as they picked a date I was available on. So I actually had people reach out to me and say, this is the date we're thinking about. Are you available? And then it only occurred twice where I had conflicts. Both ended up working it out. So that they weren't rescheduling a date I was already booked.
I was shocked how many DJs were whining during COVID about, they've changed the date once. They want to do it twice and I'm going to cancel. I'm like, what do you mean you're going to cancel? Well, because it's a year out and my fees would have gone up by several $100s. I'm like,
yeah.
No, they wouldn't have. 1, 2, you have a contract with a client. They want to move their date to next October. Take the money. You already got the client. Now you filled a date. What are you whining about? Yeah. Well, because I told them they have 6 months to decide. I'm like, the world shut down, dummy. Are you kidding? Yeah, I was I was pretty embarrassed to be a DJ for a while there during 2020.
Yeah.
We also did the same thing. When people wanted to change, we just let them change the date. As long as we're open to date. Yeah. Transfer it over. Because again, you're right, Jay. It's locked, that date's in. You're right, the customer. keep them, make them
Right,
happy.
it's COVID.
Make 'em happy.
Force majeure.
I had the force majeure and during COVID, and it was like a once in a lifetime thing. It was the 50th reunion for high school, and they were like, "Hey, what's your policy on?" I said, "Look, I'm hurting too. I'm affected too." I said, "Would you be amenable to splitting it 50-50? I'll give you 50% of your retainer back." That'd be wonderful. You have to be reasonable. There's a time to be reasonable, and I think this once in 100 years or whatever it is that this, we had this pandemic, it was just the right thing to do. One thing I would like to share that did not come up, at least that I do it here in Jersey, and it's called the mailbox rule.
Where you give the mob a discount.
No.
Oh.
What it is because I have my annuals where I've been doing them for, now 14, 15 years, some of them. They canceled this year, unfortunately. But anyway, they were ongoing, and they would just, hello, on the phone. Yep. All right. And then we would start an email, and what's expected, the usual, what time am I going to be there? What am I going to provide, and what is the price? And this is how much you have to put down for a retainer. And the mailbox rule is, once they've accepted that and given me the 50% retainer, we're good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, my contract is one page, and then it's the second page is the specialty stuff, like, what venue, what time, because those things all change. But other than that, I do the same that you all have said here as well, except I do the mailbox rule with people that I trust. And it's like, I haven't been burned yet. Could I get burned? Yeah, I could. I could go and do the gig and I don't get the check that day. But
my client canceled last December, 2 weeks out. They hadn't given me the deposit yet. Mm-hmm. I had every right to say, you owe me. But it's a 13-year client. It's the same sort of thing where I was like, and They said, Jay, we're still doing the party, but we can't dance. Due to COVID regulations, they won't let us dance. So we're not going to need your services. So I had to weigh 12 years of making this against me whining, by the way, to the judge and the U.S. attorney client of mine. So I'm like, and they just hired me for this year, and they'll send the client. It's sometimes you have to take each client a little bit in consideration.
Yep.
And by the way, what Howie said about cancellations, I've had a guy get deployed. My contract doesn't have anything about military deployment. I know DJs, and I simply said, I'm happy to hold your contract and move the date. I moved it. They were happy. They got married. I've also had somebody die, and they got a full refund. But if you cancel on me with some like, we didn't feel like it or we decided, my rule of thumb has always been my retainer is traditionally between $400 and $600. And if I had to meet you somewhere, you're getting back half of it, and the other half is being charged back to me for office fees. And those office fees are, I drove to Starbucks for an hour, I stayed there for 2 hours, I drove home for an hour, and no one's ever whined about it. I had 2 cancels this year where the mothers of the groom canceled me. Just want to let you know that Howie and, Samantha aren't getting married. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
We're not.
Can you have Samantha contact me only because she signed the contract? I understand that you're the groom's mother. Well, she's really upset right now. I said, I'm really sorry. I totally appreciate that she's upset, but she needs to contact me directly to officially cancel. but also to discuss anything involved in the contract. And guess what? No call, no refund, completely ghosted both times. And I'm like, I feel bad, but what do you want me to do? Their date came and went. I didn't fill it. And that's also been my rule during COVID. If you had to move your date to a date I wasn't available, do you get your retainer back? You get part of it back if I book that date.
Yeah.
If I don't book that date, and this is a verbal, you do not get any money back. So I've had 2 this year where I was off on a weekend. They changed their date to a date I wasn't available. Hence, I kept their money. Sorry, but it wasn't my fault.
I'll tell you what I like. Soup du jour. You know, as long as it's not French onion. Yeah.
I love French onion soup.
I don't do onions at all.
Why?
Because I don't, because they're soft and they crunch and there's something very unnatural about that. So no, thank you.
Really? A guy with like 10,000 records behind him and unnatural is an onion in soup? In the day of
onion
digital?
or anything. I had liver tonight with no onions on it.
Oh, who eats liver without onions? Did you have bacon?
No, what the hell you want bacon for? It's liver.
Yeah, John, back me up. Liver and bacon? John,
Bacon's the topping. Bacon go on it.
Jay,
You can go bacon anywhere.
Jay, you
Bacon
just asked a
candy.
question. I know the answer.
what's that?
You asked the question, who eats liver with no onions? And the answer is people that live near in Brian's neighborhood, like Jeffrey Dahmer.
Well, that's the
right.
thing. Everybody gets shot in Chicago. Everyone's a cannibal in Milwaukee.
That's
This
right.
is Jay. This is Jay's world. Everyone's a surfer in Temecula, even though you're nowhere near the water.
Exactly.
I'm
Over
sorry,
mountain.
but Thank you for teeing that one up for me, Jay.
That makes
was
me
so
laugh every
perfect.
time we go to New Jersey, and I'm like, that's a surf shop? For what? Like they sell surfboards, and I'm like, are there waves are they here when we're not here? Is that
I'm from Boston. I know about surfing. Oh, wait a minute. I'm from Temecula today. I know about surfing.
Hey, everybody, it's Jay, your meteorologist for Ocean City and Atlantic City. We're looking at 6-inch to 1 foot swells today. Hi, Kayabunga, get out there.
Hey, Jay, we have surf shops here in Chicago, too.
Yeah, with a lake.
See, Howie, all I had to do was
It's
just
one
do
of-
that
it's
in
inland
anarchy.
ocean, dude.
Yeah, all you guys are good
Completely lost
thinking
control of
Canadian
it.
boats, okay? And inspiring great folk songs. That's it.
I got Jay wound up. I got Buddy wound up.
Just throw the hand grenade in and run, right? And just-
Brian,
They're laughing, right?
Love you guys.
All right. Hey,
Love you, Jay.
thank you guys. Thank you so much for your input and for the audience out there.
Thank you, Howie.
Remember, we're not lawyers. This is just how we do it in our area, what works for us. And,
We haven't
you
mixed
know,
food yet.
use what you can, discard the rest. And if you have something you would like us to cover,
Make it exciting.
drop it in because this show is going to come up after, I guess, Easter sometime.
Yeah.
Leave it in the YouTube comments. And,
Show starts on Rosh Hashanah next year.
right.
Happy 4th of July,
And
everyone.
with that,
By the way, quick preview. Next week's topic, how to get out of a manslaughter charge.
Happy Greek Easter.
all right.
Everything's
Good
better with
night,
onions.
everyone. Thank you.